everybody? It's your boy, The Fett, here to talk about probably the most exciting thing happening to the Orioles this season, and that's going to be draft picks. So I'm going to use two segments for the show today. First one, we're going to go over draft picks. Second one, I got some killer stats to explain just how bad this Oriole team is. Let's dive right into it. Let's not waste any time. Orioles draft Grayson Rodriguez in the first round. He's a high school pitcher out of Texas. A lot of people had him falling a little bit later, towards the end of the first round. They didn't think he would go in the top 15, as the Orioles selected in the top 15. But you know what? I wouldn't expect anything else from this management team. The whole draft, they went pitcher heavy, as I'm going to review the first 10 picks. I haven't watched that much of Grayson Rodriguez, but it's always a risk when you draft a high school player like this. I'm hoping that he produces, obviously, being a right-handed pitcher. We need pitching, but I'm not going to hold my breath. There was a CBA pick they were able to get in Caden Griner out of Oregon State. He's a shortstop, mostly known for his defensive abilities. He can play short. He played really good at Oregon State, but his lacking potential side is going to be his hitting. Like I said, baseball is harder for me to analyze the draft. It's harder to find film. It's harder to find highlights. A lot of this I'm going off reports. I use MLB Pipeline, but not a bad pickup. We could always use guys. With us about to lose Manny, obviously, I believe that's what this pick was. Pretty much thinking of the future without Manny, and we're stacked at shortstop with Ryan Mountcastle, pretty much waiting in the wings to play shortstop, and maybe we can move Beckham back over there next year. We'll just have to see how it plays out. So the Orioles in the third round, they go after Blaine Knight, a right-handed pitcher out of Arkansas. And this guy was projected as a second-round player, so we got him in the third, so instantly adds value to me. He had 88 strikeouts and 22 walks in 95.1 innings last year. Pretty solid numbers. We'll have to see how that plays in. They haven't really determined, these guys, what their roles are going to be from starting pitcher to bullpen. But I like this guy's stats. 88 Ks, 22 walks. That's pretty decent K to walk ratio. And then in the fourth round, we took another high school player, Drew Rom. Supposedly through the pipeline thing, it says he's got 3 interesting pitches. That's all I know about him. But he's a left-handed pitcher, so just add in that pitching depth. 2 righties in Rodriguez and Knight, and then you go Rom here. The 5th round pick was Robert Newstrom out of Iowa. He's got a pretty solid stat line in 53 games, batted .311 with 11 home runs. The pipeline rated him 147th out of the top 200 prospects. I'll take that. You get him in the 5th round. It's another outfielder. It's a Big Ten guy. I like this pick. Let's just hope, like I said, we don't really know how these guys are going to produce. We don't know what levels they're going to be distributed to, so it'll be something I need to keep up with and give you guys an update on as we head into the spring to see where they're assigned. In the 6th rounder, the Orioles take a 17-year-old high school pitcher out of Puerto Rico, and Yacavelis Lareras. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's really young. He's 17 years old. Not a lot of info on this guy, so like I said, we're going to have to figure out where this guy's going to play out. In the 7th rounder, we get J.J. Montgomery. He's a right-handed pitcher out of UCF. This guy has been labeled as a bullpen guy. He's got a mid-90s fastball. He had 74 Ks and 21 walks in 63.2 innings. They're already labeling him as a bullpen guy, probably somebody that can come out and play perhaps before the setup man. He's another right-handed pitcher, which if you're counting, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the first 7 rounds. Only 1 left-handed pitcher. Round 8, we go with Ryan Conroy out of Ellen. He's supposed to be a ground ball specialist. Fastball peaks around 92. It's usually 89 to 92. He does have a slider. His number's not as good as he had 67 Ks, 32 walks, and 79 innings in college at Ellen, which is down small school in the Carolinas. Another right-handed pitcher. So that makes 5 out of the 8 first draft picks for the Orioles were right-handed pitching. Now, the last 2 guys I don't have any details on. Kevin Magee, he's a left-handed pitcher out of St. John's, and Dallas Lister, he's a right-handed pitcher out of St. Catherine College. So, overall, in the first 10 picks, because that's all I'm going to go over, the Orioles only grabbed 2 basically position guys in Griner and Newstrom, and everybody else was a pitcher. They kind of left the left-handies alone. They only grabbed 2 southpaws, and they grabbed 6 of the 10 end up being righties. So this is a Duquette-led draft class. We don't know how much longer Duquette's going to be running the franchise after this season. I am excited for Griner and probably Rodriguez too, even though I shouldn't be. But we'll have to see. I mean, they're going pitching heavy in the draft, which obviously they know that's their issue. And another huge factor is they're racing for the number 1 pick in 2019. It's between the Royals, White Sox, and O's currently right now, with the Orioles checking in at 23-54, 28.5 games back with a .299 winning percentage. I guess play for the first pick at this point. It's just ugly, so why not try to improve for the future? Blow it all up and load that farm system. So this was segment 1. This was me just going over the Orioles draft pick. I've been neglecting it. The draft was in early June. It's just really hard for me to tune in to the draft and understanding the prospects because college baseball is so wide and diverse, and you have Division 1, 2, 3. And then you have high school guys getting drafted who I have no idea the high school prospect baseball landscape. That is increasingly difficult to keep up with when you're focusing just on one franchise like I do with the Orioles being my favorite team. But, obviously management wants us to go the pitching route, and that's where we're going. All right, stay tuned as I'm about to kick off the second segment where we review the Orioles getting destroyed over the last 4 opponents. All right, picking up where I left off, this is the second segment. I just talked about the Orioles draft picks. Let's go ahead and recap. I'm going to try something new. I'm not recapping the games, the good, the bad, the ugly I have, because the bad and the ugly, there's almost no good to report here. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the last 3 series. As we were swept by Boston, we lost 2-0, 6-4, and 5-1. Run differential, they scored 13, we scored 5. Obviously, you're not going to win any type of baseball games in series battles, interdivision, when you get outdrawn like they did to the Red Sox. Red Sox superior team. I got nothing for it. Oh well, turn the page. Then we play the Marlins, who I honestly thought, all right, we can escape with 3 games here, but we only escape with 1. We lose the first one 2-0. We lose the second one 5-4. And then we win the final game 10-4. We outscored them actually 14-11, yet walk away with 1 win. Unbelievable, all right? This comes right in the middle hiatus of Chris Davis getting benched. Not like we needed him, not like he was doing anything, but it just, when your $23 million first baseman can't hit a lick and he needs benched and he needs to go see the hitting coach for an extended time, that's embarrassing. So next we got the Beltway series against the Nats, who had swept us in Baltimore. And we lose the first game 9-7, come back, win the second game 3-0, and then we lose the finale 4-2. Just hideous. I don't really understand. We are only outscored by 1 run, but we take 2 losses. It at this point, everything I've hit on this year is happening. The pitching sucks, the batting sucks. The guys don't look like they really care. They're not in tuned. I know, they're out there, they're doing their job, they're going to bat, they're going to practice, they're doing, batting practice, all types of crap. They're showing up. It's just they're not very good. And that's becoming increasingly obvious as the Orioles continue their march towards 100 losses. The most recent series are playing the Braves. Now here's a surprise. The Braves probably the third best team, all right? They're way better than the Marlins, but they're not quite as good as the Nats in Boston. The Braves are the future of baseball, as they have a lot of young talent, homegrown in the system, and we took 2 out of 3 from them, which surprisingly was amazing. The Braves, we beat them 10-7, 7-5, and then we lose to them 7-3. We end up... It's a love-hate at this point. Chris Davis comes back in this series. First game back, he hits a home run. Manny ends up helping us win in extra innings. But besides that, there was really nothing. It's just ugly to watch. Ugly baseball. I stomach myself to watch a couple innings a night. I even sometimes check the recaps because I'm just so frustrated at this point with this team. Never in my life have I seen a worse baseball team. Obviously, I focus in on these guys, so I take it a little more personal, and I take it upon myself to watch, crunch stats, look stats up, compare it to the rest of the league. It is an absolute crap show in Baltimore at Camden Yards. So we actually scored... I don't even know where to begin. We scored 20 runs of their 19. We don't pull the sweep off, which, I didn't expect us to even beat the Braves any game. So I'm happy taking 2 out of 3 here. And then last night we lost the Mariners 5-3, just a side note, which brings us to our current record at 23-54. We are 28.5 games back. We have a .299 winning percentage. Like I said in the draft segment 1, we are racing for the number 1 pick against the Royals and the White Sox, which the White Sox have enough depth and talent in their minor league system. So, honestly, I see us being the worst team. Don't forget we got more Yankees series coming up, and I just... we got to play the Indians again in Cleveland. There's a bunch of series where we could get swept very easily. So let me pull some stats before I do some history, all right? Let's talk about the Manny watch, all right? Listen to what this guy's doing. Manny Machado is batting .305 with an on-base percentage of .375 while slugging .559, hitting 19 home runs and 55 RBIs. Those are all leading the team. He's actually leading the All-Star votes at this time over Frankie Lindor, despite the Indians' attempt to clown on him, saying that he wears sandals with white socks. Really funny. I got to give it to the Indians' social media team. That was actually enjoyable to watch, making fun of Manny. But he is the best shortstop right now, and he is still winning the votes. He's absolute terror. He's the only guy batting. He's the only guy going up to the plate and looking like he's punching his meal ticket. And we're about to lose him. Our management has decided in their infinite wisdom that A, they're going to trade him before the deadline, or B, they're going to sour the taste of losing in his mouth so bad that he just leaves for anywhere other than Baltimore next year, no matter how much money is thrown at him, it doesn't even matter that we've helped him grow and come up through the ranks here. He literally is done with us. Dylan Bundy leads us in 3 major categories as he has 6 wins, 108 strikeouts with a 3.75 ERA. He leads the team in all those categories. Dylan Bundy having a nice number 1 season, but just not getting the run support he needs. He would be a much better pitcher. He'd probably have 10 wins this year if he could get run support. The pitching as a whole is just trash. Listen to these stats. They are 28th in the majors in ERA with a 4.87 earned run average. Winnings inning pitched, 1.51. That's dead last, 30th. Okay? 29 quality starts, ties for 25th. But they also are dead last as the opposing batters are batting .281 against us. Let that sink in. We are dead last in 2 of the top 4 categories for team pitching. Okay? And then we are third to last in ERA. I mean, we have a lot of quality starts, 25th, but... we're still back in the late 20s. Major League Baseball ranking statistics, that is horrible. Obviously, with just hearing the pitching stats, you guys know we're not producing runs. Therefore, it just spells disaster. Disaster, I'm going to bring up, the worst Orioles team in history. Team batting average right now is 227th. That is next to last. Runs scored, 280. Good for 29th, next to dead last. They're slugging at .381. just 27th, and their on-base percentage is 30th in the majors, dead last at 293. So taking those two major team pitching and batting categories, statistics, and ranking them and showing where they are, you can see that this ball club is just terrible. If not the worst, if not next to worst, but definitely the worst in the AL East, both record and statistic-wise, which I like to stick to stats because stats don't lie, and the stats tell the story for everything. So just cannot fathom how bad we are at this point. I come into a baseball season with as much hope as I did this year, as you guys heard me in my earlier podcasts. But man, has that quickly soured. Here I am at the end of June, just begging for football, begging for hockey, begging for free agency NBA. I mean, anything to stop the bleeding here, because it's a dead bird, and we're only 77 games in, and that's not even halfway. So at this point, game 81, I'll be holding a podcast where I talk about what we need to do as a franchise completely. I mean, I don't really want to see Buck get pushed down, but I believe that Buck, as well as Dan Duquette in management, kind of needs to step away. We need new eyes, fresh face on the franchise. So just a lot to do there. Let's talk a little bit about Chris Davis. He got benched for a couple games. He was out of the lineup, I wouldn't say like 5 to 7 games, but what I did is I broke down his stats, okay? He's batting 149. He's got 5 home runs, 20 RBIs, 61 games played, 222 at-bats with only 33 hits and 93 strikeouts. If you want to break down his 93 strikeouts, okay, he had 1 strikeout in March. There are only 2 games, okay? In April, 32 Ks. In May, 39. And currently in June, even though he didn't play 7 games, he's got 18 strikeouts, okay? $23 million we're blowing on this bum. At this point, I wonder if there's a buyout clause, if somehow we can get rid of him, because for a career he's a 242 hitter and he's making $23 million off us, and he's signed for the next couple seasons. So you add all that in, I'm done with Chris Davis. I'm done dealing with the crush mania. Actuality fact is we're gonna have to ride this dude out. I mean, we locked him up long term. I mean, I don't know if he needs more Adderall or what, but he is terrible. He is awful. I mean, he is hurting us statistically on every level. So that's my rant about Chris Davis. Let's talk about the worst birds history, all right? So 2011, 2010, 2009, 2008, 2007. We all hovered between 69 and 64 wins. Didn't hit 100 losses, but we were close all those years, all right? That's a 5-year span where we were the worst bottom of the barrel. And for us, as Orioles fans, it didn't seem like it would ever end. 2001, 2002, we also were pretty bad. 2001, we were 63 and 98, okay? And that right there is pretty much the worst of the worst records for us during the 2000s, was at 63 and 98. According to season-by-season baseball reference statistics, though, that is not the worst Orioles team of all time. You got to go back to 1988, where the Orioles were 54 and 107. And then 1955 and 1956, the 55 team was 57 and 97, and the 56 team was 54 and 100. So basically, that was before they played the full 162-game schedule. So the worst Orioles team of history has been 54 and 107 in 1988, 2 years before I was born, which, when you look at it right now, all right, so we are 7 games away from halfway through the season, okay? And right now we are 23 and 54, all right? So the good news is we have no, we don't. We need to win 4 games to be halfway to 1988. I don't see that happening. It's embarrassing, but it's coming, and it's probably time. With as much as we splurged in the last 5 years, it was a fun run while we had it. We had a AL Championship Series appearance. We had one division title, a couple wild card appearances, but it looks like the fun is over. The Manny Machado era is about to end, and we, Baltimore Orioles fans, are going back to the basement. So, just overall, wanted to do this a little bit different, break down some stats, throw in some numbers, and give a lot of people, if you're not an Orioles fan and you're listening to this, you probably think, wow, that team is so crappy. And we are. We were terrible during the 2000s. The late 90s were rough to watch. Even the 90s, we couldn't get past the Indians. So our return to prominence is going to take a little bit longer. Those late 1960s, early 1970s team were great. Even our World Series title team in '83 was sweet. But, for an Orioles fan like myself who's 27 years old, my fondest memory is going to the ALCS and then getting beat down by the Royals. I have nothing else. I have Manny Machado. That's it. As a kid, I remember the 90s were good to us, but I remember we couldn't beat the Indians. And, the 2000s were rough for me. In fact, it was hard for me basically to stomach those years of baseball when your team is constantly 67 and 95 back years. The Red Sox and the Yankees are constantly winning World Series. You lose your love for baseball, and unfortunately, I probably sound like a bandwagon or a fair weather fan, but I'm not. I got the logo tatted on my leg. I'm here, checking on the scores, running stats every single day. I'm analyzing draft picks. I'm checking free agency for next year, and I'm coming up with plans that'll help us. Obviously, these will never be put in effect as I'm not in a management position or even associated with the franchise. I am just a fan, a die-hard Orioles fan. And, maybe I had my expectations too high this season, and that's what the problem was. But this was my second segment, going over the last couple games, crunching some stats, giving you guys the real team averages and everything. So give me a like, give me a comment, say what you want. The Orioles do suck, and I admit it, but it's not going to last forever. So I appreciate everybody listening, and a special thanks to SkiveWalker for doing the editing on this. He does a great job. Even though his Yankees are constantly thrashing my birds, I got to give him props. You take it easy out there, and you stay classy, all right? USA, USA.